Hi there. I'm sorry I'm using a crappy mic. And of course, crappy webcam. Um, I'm currently engaged in an argument with an anti-feminist who's arguing that feminism is a rape culture because it denies that because most feminists don't believe that men are raped very often. Um, but that's not what this video is about. I was just in the process of looking for counterexamples um, to this idea. Um, I came across an article uh, uh, by Matt Forney entitled "Why Feminists Want Men to Rape Them." And so I decided, this happened just now, I decided I needed to drop everything and react to this. I've never seen this before. I am honestly not that familiar with Matt Forney. I know he is one of Davis Arani's friends. So we're just going to read this article in its entirety, because fuck him and his AdSense. It's time to stop beating around the bush. Feminists want to be raped. It's the only logical explanation for how they behave. It's the only way to understand why they can cheer on hordes of Muslim refugees. Oh, to make a village. Okay, let me get through the article. It's the only way to comprehend why they can whip themselves up into a frenzy over masculine men meeting up for a beer. Is a link to a Return of Kings article. And smearing them as leading pro-rape rallies. Everything feminists do, from holding up refugees welcome signs at airports to passing affirmative consent laws, is geared around encouraging men to insert themselves. This isn't a conscious urge. No feminist wakes up in the morning and thinks to herself, I'm gonna try and get raped today. Oh God. There's no protocols of the elders of Sinisa Falls laying out a secret plan to turn females into walking fuck dolls for rapist men. But deep in the recesses of her lizard hindbrain, the average feminist wants nothing more than for a man to shove her into a wall and force himself deep inside her. Here are the reasons why feminists want to be sexually assaulted. By working around the clock to aid rapists. Number one, feminism is an R-selected strategy, and rape is an R-selected strategy. As anonymous conservative has shown repeatedly, leftism and conservatism are merely expressions of two competing reproductive strategies. R selection and K selection. To review quickly, K selection breeds children to compete in a world of limited resources through two-parent upbringing, defined by high sexual dimorphism, monogamy, late sexual maturation, and loyalty to the in-group, i.e. wolves. R selection breeds children for a world of abundant resources through a single mother upbringing defined by low sexual dimorphism, promiscuity, early sexual maturation, and disloyalty to the tribe, i.e. rabbits. The conflict between leftism, of which feminism is a subset, and conservatism is the conflict between R and K. Right, I'm supposed to be arguing against this or something. No fuckwad. There can only humans all have one reproductive strategy programmed into them. A-selected individuals want a world that encourages competition and meritocracy, while R-selected individuals want a world of free resources, free food, free money, free shelter, and free sex. In a K-selected world, men and girls have to compete to earn the right to mate with one another. In an R-selected world, men and girls have sex with no thought as to the consequences. I will admit, you are making the R-selected world sound better. Oh my god. Oh my god. There's a book called Curse of the High IQ by Aaron Clary. By its very definition, rape is an act of entitlement, forcing yourself on someone who doesn't want to have sex with you, whom you haven't earned the right to sleep with. Much in the same way leftists feel entitled to take other people's money through taxation and welfare. Rapists feel entitled to stick their penises in girls' vaginas, because that's the only kind of rape. In fact, you could say that rape is an inherently leftist form of sex, explained by so many male feminists, such as Gian Gomeschi and Hugo Schweischer, enjoy assaulting and abusing girls. I don't know who either of those people are, so I'm just going to keep going. Sexual assault is sexual. Sure, there's some. Redistributing nookie to the least privileged in society. Oh my god. This is the best thing ever. Feminists, being leftists, are arch strategists themselves. The purpose of feminism is to eliminate restrictions on female sexuality. No, the purpose of feminism, well, feminism is really big, so it depends on who you ask. But if you restrict yourself to asking feminists, you're always going to get some variation of end gender equality. Now, precisely what this means and whether or not they want anything else on top of that will vary. And even more so will how they want to go about that. But that's going to be a pretty consistent theme. Allow girls to sleep around without getting pregnant. Let them legally kill their own born babies when they do get knocked up. And have it all funded by the taxpayer. From an art strategist's perspective, rape is a good thing because it allows the female to have children without having to do anything aside from breathe. What the fuck is wrong with you? Alright, so in the way of logical argument, I need to spy a little bit. Here's an evolutionary psychology bomb for you. Getting raped means you don't get to choose your reproductive partner, which means you don't get to pick the one who will have the best genes and the best chance of surviving. Like, I'll admit I don't know much about evolutionary psychology, but isn't that, like, the view of women as evolving to avoid being raped, like, a major fucking recurring theme in evolutionary psychology? It's well known that a great many girls have rape fantasies, and a significant number of rape victims claim to have orgasmed during their assaults. That's okay. So, a lot of men have fantasies about being fucking anthropomorphic animals and being enslaved and forcibly raped by other anthropomorphic animals. That doesn't mean that they want to turn into anthropomorphic animals and be raped by other anthropomorphic animals. As for orgasming during their sexual assault, yes, that's what happens when you stimulate that kind of skin tissue. There's a fancy name for it. A bunch. It has nothing to do with what a person consciously wants or subconsciously wants. Like, that is as silly as pointing out that someone, when you slap them, feels pain, or even like when you brush your hand across their arm, can feel it, whether or not they subconsciously wanted you to brush their hand across their arm. That just happens because it activates the nerve endings, and the brain, even the subconscious, doesn't get to tell the nerve endings not to activate. Both these points serve as evidence that a portion of the female population, the R-selected leftist portion, not only wants to be raped, but is physiologically adapted for it. Once you accept the premise that feminists subconsciously desire to have their vaginal walls torn up by psychopathic men like you, or no, in fairness, you haven't, as far as I know, Matt Forney hasn't raped anyone, but so, like Roosh, because he has, unless he's lying when he makes accounts of him raping people, their behavior suddenly makes sense. For example, feminists unwilling to condemn the Muslim refugees who have been assaulting girls in Germany and other European countries, and indeed have accused those who talk about the story of racism or Islamophobia, because they want those refugees to keep raping. If I had a soul, I'd be in tears. No, Matt. Listen, Matty boy. Reason, I shouldn't call you that. That's emasculating. I'm sorry, but Matt, the reason that feminists or I don't know, like people who aren't bigots, don't want to think endlessly about rapes committed by Muslims is because there's a lot of fucking problems with hatred and hate crimes against Muslims. And they don't want to perpetuate that by calling attention to what misguided people will see as justification for it. It's not that they subconsciously want to keep them raping, just because, if you keep them going long enough, you just might get a turn. Muslim refugees, or the Muslim refugees, because that's not a real word, streaming into Europe from the Middle East are the consummate R-selected cowards. Instead of fighting for their families back home, they're fleeing to safe countries where they can live off of government benefits. Go fuck yourself! I'll tell you what, Matt Forney, I've seen you, and I don't want to fat shame you, but I don't think you would be fighting in any fucking wars if it came to where you live. And if you did, I don't think you'd do a terribly fucking good job. Okay. Instead of being grateful that Europeans are willing to take them in, they throw temper tantrums because their internet isn't fast enough, their food isn't tasty enough, or they don't have enough to do. What's that last one? It's from Federalist Papers. Breitbart. And Breitbart for the next link as well. I'm sorry. Muslims rape European girls for the same reason they riot over slow Wi-Fi. They believe they deserve to get something for nothing. Some right-wing personalities have tried to explain the left's embrace of Muslim refugees. With such nebulous concepts as pathological altruism, but the reality is much bleaker. In the darkest recesses of their minds, feminists want swarthy refugees to punch them in the face, tear their clothes off, and spit roast them like plump juicy swine. I don't expect them to suddenly realize the truth either, because 2. Feminists encourage girls to get raped, then deny all responsibility for their actions. Actually, you said earlier that getting raped was a leftist way of reproducing because it doesn't require you to do anything. In the past few years, even the slightest suggestion that girls have a responsibility for their own safety is met with choirs of misogynist. Don't blame the victim. The oft-repeated feminist chant, "Don't teach women not to get raped, teach men not to rape," is an explicit call for girls to place themselves into situations where they're likely to get sexually assaulted, then dodge all blame. Yeah, because we shouldn't let fucking criminals stop us from doing the things we fucking enjoy. That... And it is not. It is like, I am all for giving women who want to protect themselves the tools to do so. I'm even for like just educating random women, like with flyers or commercials or shit about how to protect themselves. But I am not willing to demand that women do everything they can to protect themselves on pain of having their rape not actually be a genuine crime against them. Much worse, on pain of it being treated as a crime by them against themselves. Because people should be able to do shit and not get raped. And so I, for one, am going to fight for a world where they can. And that doesn't involve, that doesn't involve educating women on not doing the things they should be able to do without getting raped. That involves trying to make those things safe, which involves trying to get people not to rape them, and trying, like, both through education, where some people regard acts that are rape as not actually being rape, which sounds silly, but I can cite a bunch of examples of people saying stupid shit about rape. And if, I can cite people, including like big anti-feminist YouTubers who will present situations as either ambiguous or not rape, when those situations are clearly rape and are legally considered rape. To the point where if someone watched Thunderfoot's Teach Them Not to Rape video and then went out and lived their life based on that, they would, could rape someone. Depending on so the video, I don't want to go on a tangent, but the portion I'm talking about is when he says that the weakest claims of rape are basically when people are drunk. The pictures he shows are of women who are so drunk that they're like barely standing. Now, that's about the point / past the point. Let me think before I say. I'm going to think and then say something so I don't say something stupid. Yeah, that's actually considerably past the point where they can't consent anymore. While some feminists are no doubt doing this out of naivete, the subconscious motivator for many of them is their R-selected psychology. Personal responsibility is a case-strategist concept. In the rabbit warren, things just happen because rabbits aren't social and don't have fucking... By discouraging girls from protecting themselves, feminists are implicitly encouraging them to get violated, then pinning the blame on an undefinable rape culture, which brings me to my next point. Okay, challenge accepted. Rape culture is a culture or aspect, like a subculture, wherein things that are in fact rape are either justified as moral or have their immoralness diminished. So basically, it's a culture where rape is not treated as sufficiently grievous, or where some rape is not treated as sufficiently grievous by a non-negligible portion of the population. So, like, American culture, taken aggregately, is still a rape culture, because the number of people who think things like having sex with a woman who is so completely drunk that she's passing in and out of consciousness or can't walk, or continuing to have sex with a woman after she's asked you to stop, or with a man, for all of those things. Hell, just by the fact that there's a non-negligible number of people who think that men can't be raped, America is a rape culture. But there's also a non-negligible number of people who believe in those other things. And admittedly, no, negligible could be a bit subjective, and I couldn't really give you a solid number for what percentage of the population needs to think a certain way for it to be a rape culture, but there are a lot of concepts that we don't consider undefined that are like that. Like in the US right now, it's very, very far away from being negligible. Number 3, feminists talk about the West having a rape culture because they want a rape culture. As mentioned above, the worldwide leftist outrage against Roosh and Return of King's tribal meetups, Roosh, the rapist or liar, far outstripped their reaction to the Muslim gang rape attacks in Germany and Sweden during New Year's Eve. All right, so the thing about feminism is that it's about changing the culture, achieving, what we might call social change. Now, those gang rapes didn't occur because of a cultural idea that is acceptable, at least not on the part of the culture at large. Or at least not in the mind of the feminists in question. Maybe you could probably make a decent argument that the people in question, you could make a decent argument, but it is possible that the people in question did justify their actions, and if that's the case, then persuasion could conceivably have averted those crimes. But in fighting a culture war, you don't speak out against people who aren't fighting, so those Muslims are not changing the culture like backwards in a way that feminists don't want. They're doing something feminists don't want, but what feminists are trying to do is propagate and combat ideas. So they're going to go after ideas, and criticize and protest the spread of bad ideas, more so than they're going to show outrage over distinct crimes, unless those crimes represent some specific injustice that they're trying to stop. And you might say, well, rape, but rape is a rape that occurs as an injustice, but it's not necessarily like a social injustice. A social injustice is when the rape is tolerated by the rest of society, or when rape victims are treated badly after the fact. A rape is just a violent crime. Or at least, again, that's, I think, how these feminists would cognize it. The feminists that you're talking to don't speak German or Swedish unless you're fluent in those languages. So it may well be that feminists were talking about it more in Germany and Sweden. This isn't just hysteria, just because of hysteria and slander. Our selected leftists are more threatened by masculine men than cowardly Muslim rapists. One of the most laughable claims feminists make about game/red pill/PUA culture is that it encourages men to feel entitled to sex and female companionship. It fucking does. Even skimming a manosphere blog will show you that this is the opposite of the truth. Game and red pill philosophy teaches men that they have to earn girls by improving themselves. Sure, but it's also really, really fucking angry with women who choose wrong. And go with the men who, in the mind of the pickup artists, have not earned them, as though it were the pickup artist and not the woman's place to decide who the woman wants to have sex with. Or not who they want to have sex, but who they are in their rights to have sex with. It's that you think that by improving yourselves in specific ways, you become entitled to sex. And we know that this is what you think because women who are not. What's that? Well, we know this is what you think because women who choose men who haven't earned them attract a lot of fucking ires from you assholes. A lot of fucking ire from you assholes. If a morbidly obese basement dweller came to the Roosh V forum and started whining about how he couldn't be laid, he'd be laughed and told to hit the gym and get a life. And if a thin person came to the Rushdie forums whining about how he couldn't get laid, Rushdie would offer to sell him his erotic memoirs. The reason why there's always been an overlap between the seemingly hedonistic manosphere and the more traditionalist alternative right is because both groups have the same view of sexual relationships. Men and women need to earn the right to sleep with and marry each other. The end destinations may be different, but the road is the same. Okay. So, talk of earning is bad because it makes it seem like once the earning has been completed, the other party owes them sex. Unless earn refers tautologically to what it is that causes a woman to consent. But that's clearly not how the manosphere conceives it, because otherwise, if it were, concepts like friend zoning and nice guys and the entirety of men going their own way wouldn't exist. Feminists oppose this because leftists oppose competition in general. Feminist obscurantism in regards to sexual relationships, e.g. their claims that the friend zone doesn't exist. She's fucking right there. So are men entitled to sex or not? Like, if a woman friend zones a man, is she denying him something he's entitled to? Like, that's a yes or no question. And I'm interested to hear an answer that doesn't either contradict your entire belief system or involve you coming off like a rape apologist. Or claiming that men need to just treat women like human beings. Oh my god. The article title. Yeah, there's another article called "Are Feminists and Leftists Less Than Human?" It's as long as this one, and I've been going at this for long enough that I'm not going to read it today. If they want to get laid. It's about stripping men of their ability to compete for a mate. Similarly, pushing fat acceptance, tattoos and piercing, and encouraging girls to be bossy and sarcastic is about crippling females' ability to compete for... To make matters worse, feminists have been trying to train men to rape girls for years. Their constant claim that the West has a rape culture is just wishful thinking. In actuality, rape has been on the decline for decades. Yes, because of feminists and feminism and the things they've been doing. and also because of a bunch of factors that have been reducing violent crime in general. Because of this, feminists have tried to legislate masculinity away through affirmative consent and yes means yes laws, which force men to explicitly beg for permission at every step of the sexual encounter, branding them rapists if they don't comply. Matt, is it seriously, like, if there's actual ambiguity as to whether or not a person wants to have sex with you, is it worth the risk? Like, you can misread someone's body language. Like I don't think there's any feminist who, or I'm sure there's one somewhere. You can always find one somewhere. But I don't think there's very many feminists who would regard like the word yeah, who would like not accept yeah as a substitute for yes. I would even accept like something like, oh, I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this. Like, if it's unambiguous that the other person knows what's about to happen and has the chance to say no. But the thing about that ambiguity is that if there's any ambiguity at all, a mistake can be made. And honestly, I think that, like, if someone, okay, so only if the woman or the victim didn't want it will they press charges, right? Like, they won't press charges about the lack of affirmative consent unless they actually didn't want it. So, and if you're not confident enough that you'd be willing to risk a rape charge, you're not confident enough that you don't need to ask. So, like, I guess I would say if there is no reasonable way of reading the situation wherein she does not want it, and even then, like, make absolutely sure she has several seconds to protest. And again, affirmative consent laws don't interfere with that metric of things, because they'll only, like, it will only come up if you are wrong, and if you are wrong, then you should have known to ask. Affirmative consent laws and rape culture claims are a two-pronged attack on masculinity designed to advantage sneaky males and hurt masculine men. There's no sneakier male than a rapist. Sneaky isn't the word I'd use. Like, what do you think? They're just like ninjaing around, like, behind a woman. Like, if the woman's here, they're just like ninja around behind them, and then, kapah, butt fucked, you didn't even know I was there. Unfortunately, despite all the rape hoaxes the mainstream media conjures up, the rape culture that feminists screech about has yet to materialize. The UVA rape story, for example, turned out to be a lurid masturbatory fantasy. There are two. No, there's just one here. Fantasy passed off as news. That's the Rolling Stones one. Because feminists couldn't create oh God. Because feminists couldn't create rape culture, they imported one from the Middle East. From here, all the pieces fall into place. We see clearly why the European Union is debating banning one man from their borders and labeling him as a rape advocate while letting millions of actual Muslim rapists flood their countries. We see why leftists are driven to protest masculine men, but not sneaky refugee cowards who abandon them and their families in search of government freebies and easy white women. The goal of feminism is to turn women into rape. Every feminist deep down wants nothing more than a rapist's baby in her belly. And Roosh is going to give them what they want, eh? The armada of horny, restless, greedy Muslims storming into Europe is a bounty for the R-selected feminist. Leftists will wave refugees welcome signs no matter how many girls are forcibly DP'd by angry Arab invaders, because Europe's skyrocketing rape rates are a feature, not a bug. So I'm just going to go back a little bit. Rape has been on the decline for decades, he said in the paragraph I'm pointing to right now. Next paragraph, next paragraph, next paragraph, next paragraph. And then he claims that your skyrocketing rape rates are a feature, not a bug. 5 paragraphs. You can go 5 of them. 5 paragraphs without contradicting yourself. The only thing that will stop the rape lusts of feminists and their poorly endowed Muslim abusers is Western men having the courage to call it out. There can be no compromise, no peace with these traitors inside the walls. While more moderate women can be saved, no one will ever be able to convince the termagants of the left that they should be more afraid of Muslim rapists than white racists. They are our enemies just as much as the dusky hordes planting their flags are. So, dusky hordes. I've not actually heard the word dusky. Is that a racial slur? Apparently, it's an. Huh? Yeah, having dark skin. Yeah. It doesn't say that it's slur. But yeah, of course, dusk, like when the sun goes down. I should have picked up on that. Yeah, that was wonderful. Just to elaborate, because I don't want to get I want to be clear about firm, because when I talk about it being unambiguous, the other person wants it. Like, if you're transitioning to a new kind, like from kissing to sucking something off. God, I can't believe I'm saying those words. Then it is necessary to get an explicit yes. But I think there is something to I think that there will be positions during the sexual encounter during which you can't verbally ask, for one thing. And I think that it could, there is something to it could ruin the moment. To where, like, there are other things that are equally unambiguous as a verbal yes. Such as or that are, but those things are things like, not things like them. An example, might be like a nod is as unambiguous as a verbal yes. Um, um, or heck, even, I mean, a lot of people do during sex give consent by just not saying no. And while, again, it's like, again, you should only do it when you're confident enough that basically you'd be willing to risk the rape charge. It's not that it's literally necessary to have the verbal yes at every step or every new transition. Um, it's more that, God, again, it's hard to phrase this because I want to phrase this in a way that won't be conceding the point. Um, because the objection to yes means yes laws is this ridiculous straw man of someone having to like ask before every time they like move between, like, from kissing to, I don't know, something else. And that is ridiculous because there will be cases looking at this. Sorry, I saw the related articles. They distracted me. You know what? I'm not going to go at length and describe a bunch of examples of possible sexual encounters. I don't feel like doing that today. So I'm just gonna go with it must be unambiguous. And if if it is not so unambiguous that you are willing to risk the rape charge, it's not unambiguous. And good old fashioned Davis MJ Arini has the featured comment. Feminism started. Oh, hold on. I have to do it right. Feminism started as a shit test. Women seeing how much bad behavior they could get away with without being spanked. The powers that be handed it to them, though most men held on to the candle of masculinity. Hollywood distorted perceptions and lawyers destroyed marriage. 20 years later, the misbehaving women have decided that their countrymen are no longer deserving of their wombs. So they seek after the strange rape refugees. Being an honored wife and grandmother doesn't interest them. How many of them honor their grandmothers? Imagine most of them. They'd rather be a piece of meat chained to a mosque wall because I wasn't aware of that one. Wasn't aware you could have those at mosques. These women have betrayed themselves, their country, and their God. It's very important that I not actually drink it, because otherwise I'm not accurately imitating Arini. Oh my god, I didn't scroll back. I see the comments to the response to that. I'm going to try not to do all of these. These women want government daddy to write them a check every month while they live hedonistic lifestyles, someone is responding to Arini here. That's the end goal. They want money they don't have to earn, and they want to get fucked all around town. Shit cucks are handing this shit to them too. I wrote about this here, and then he links an article, which is called which is called a 500 error. Okay. See, someone responds that they must have bad luck. Oh god. Were you spanked as a child? Droid says. Bob Trent says. With the privet switch until the blood trickled down my legs. Didn't have to have a repeat lesson. Spoke respectfully to Mama thereafter. It's not funny. It's not. That's horrifying and awful and evil, and your mother or father, whichever one did that to you, is a horrible, evil person and shouldn't have been allowed to keep you. But this, what's funny is that with the no self-awareness, it's just like, no self-awareness, you present your own child abuse behavior well after you're old enough that it's your fault that you don't know better at this point. This, I'm gonna see. There's someone whose name is Ghazi. Manuel Czech straight cisgender says, well done. Give them what they want, comma, ship the entire pro-refugee crowd off to the Middle East. First, that's a comma splice. Second, fuck you. And you do not understand the fucking concept of a refugee. This is a fucking war zone. I don't want their culture around me so much as I want them not to be in the war zone. Like, I'm neutral to them, their culture being around me. Their culture as it really exists, not as you imagine it. I even kind of, I'll be honest, I kind of like the idea that maybe in like a more Western and progressive society, some of these people will, uh, okay, 'cause I just realized I was quietly kowtowing to fucking presumption that these people, like, okay, so to what extent, to the whatever extent it is that these people aren't already progressive, and of course some of them aren't, because some of them are rapists, for instance, as we learned earlier. Maybe some of them being exposed to a culture with ideals that are, well, better. Maybe that will actually, bring them over and not make them more civilized, because this is not a valid concept, but convince them to adopt more progressive and morally upstanding political views. That's actually something I like about taking in refugees, and I don't want that can, I really, that can sound kind of like racist and condescending, like it's like, that I want to enlighten the poor ignorant savages with our enlightened political views. No. Um, if someone comes over here, you know, I need to find a way to phrase this correctly. This is what happens when you do an off the cuff thing. And before you ask, no, I'm not afraid of offending a bunch of feminists coming after me. No one is going to see this. About is that I say something stupid. So, granting the assumption, which is probably true in a tiny, tiny minority of cases, that these people are really very, very conservative Muslims, exposure to a more liberal society up a bit in that regard. And I think that's a good thing. Those who aren't really, really conservative Muslims, I suspect, are probably somewhat conservative Muslims, like as conservative as like our young Earth Christian creationists are. And again, for them, maybe it'll soften them up a bit, being in a place where that's not the main perspective around. And I think that's a good thing. But that was me reading a comment not out loud. It wasn't good enough to actually. Oh God, Hyros. This may be an odd comment for some, but there is a spiritual component. Some women are in love with Satan. Let me explain. Christianity is sexual. In Christianity, sexuality is a symbol for worship. Worshipping other gods in Israel likened to the unfaith to an un, worshipping other gods in Israel likened to an unfaithful wife with many lovers. The worship of the one God symbolized the Song of Solomon, etc. There are women with dark fascinations who are focused on ravening abusive males. In 50 Shades, the male love interest reads like a pop culture Satan. Dark, powerful, offering riches. Pop culture Satan. God. Defending the wolves among refugees is an instinctual thing for them, not intellectual. They want to reject their own tribe and its historic Christian tradition so bad they feel like they have to. I don't think these women want to be hurt so much as they are driven to make it more likely. They aren't doing so daring so much as insensate to the danger. What the fuck? Someone down here. But nearly all rapists are Muslim. Where they enter, rape increases in order of magnitude. Malmo in Sweden is the best known case, but we're seeing this also in Germany. What the fuck is wrong with you? Nearly all rapists are Muslim. That one just warrants a proper face palm. I can't. I. See. Here's the funny one, and I think this is the actual one. Um, um, it is a fact. It is a fact that rape is the number one by far female sexual fantasy. Also, the vast majority of actual rape victims orgasm during the experience. Will Tullen says that. To which, actually, I read this wrong, but I'm going to say it anyway. To which Droid says, "What's your number one sexual fantasy?" And then the next comment was deleted. It's actually the way that they're full of that. It's not. It wasn't actually the reply to that, but still. And I lied. I have to keep going. This is just too good. Patriarchy theory isn't a feminist complaint. It's a sexual fantasy. If male power and dominance doesn't exist, feminists will conjure it up in their imaginations or import it from a culture where it does exist. At the preconscious level of emotional and sexual reasoning, women test boundaries and act out, not because they want the things they're demanding from you, but because they want men to resist them and to create structure which compels their submission. It's no different than a child throwing a tantrum for attention. Like the classic nice guy or the hapless parent who gives his spoiled tantrum-throwing child everything she wants, Western men failed the political shit test. They assume women actually wanted equality, and in doing so abdicated their responsibility to lead. If this is how women behave politically, then it's an open question as to if they are competent to shoulder the burden of civic responsibility in a democracy. It's like letting children vote. I'd say remove women's right to vote, but it's not like we have a representative government anyway, so what's the difference? Okay, someone says a picture is fake. I actually must have missed it or scrolled past it or something. Oh, someone's holding a sign that says, we'll trade racists for rapists. And apparently it's fake. It actually said, we'll trade racists for refugees. I mean, I mean, I got some racists in the back, but I mean, I can't do that shit to refugees. I just, not again. That's all, everyone. Goodbye.